I was recording. All right, what's up, guys? It's Hoodie, and I'm actually back with a video for the first time in forever. I've been playing a whole lot of Overwatch for the past like 2.5 years, I would say, something around there, and I decided that I wanted to start getting into coaching. So this is going to be the first part of that. A lot of you that have seen it on Twitter have known that I am just doing free like VOD reviews for anyone that would want it. You can just upload it to YouTube on console or on PC. It doesn't matter your SR, and I will do my best to help you get even higher. So today I have Saadelsun, or Sam, somebody that I've known for a long time, and he's going to help me. He's a really good Reinhardt player. Sam, tell the people why they should care about you.
You really shouldn't. But I just sit there. I like playing the video games. I like playing or my preferred choices are tanks and support. But the reason why I think people should listen simply or start being concerned with how they play Ryan is because currently in Overwatch there's a lot of Reinhardt players, but they don't seem to have a general knowledge of how to actually play the character. They just assume that you hold shield and that's what you do, or you have your magical ult and you say, I'm gonna hit the fattest of slams and I'm gonna win. That is not how it works. That is not how life works. So you have to do a lot more than simply just look for two things. And sadly to say, but mechanically, tanks and most of the supports aren't on the level of, let's say, DPS players. Their job is to simply DPS, and your job as a tank player is to think for them, is to think for everybody else, and to think for yourself. You think. That is your biggest asset. And a lot of people need to learn how to think.
So Sam has also, with very little effort, been consistently diamond and played with Masters players as well. So that is the rank that he is right now. But he thinks a lot better than he plays also. So
Sadly,
that is
I am very
that is one of the
trash at
reasons
playing.
why I wanted him in. But yeah, so very little effort. Like, what was it? You made it to diamond without any sort of like sound at all. Was that what it was? Is like you got to
Basically,
diamond
no
without
comms, no
yeah
microphones, no dueling, no nothing.
yeah
Just in-game comms. You just sit there and you just play video games. You
yeah.
can get higher, but that's just that was my current plateau at the time. I haven't played that much lately, but I guess I can hit diamond, So it's not that different than what I feel I've played. I just had to change certain mindsets to get higher than what I used to be. So without further ado, let's just get this rolling.
Yeah. A quick thing before we get into the actual VOD. Shout outs to Loudboy CTS for giving us the video. He gave us a Reinhardt video and a Mercy video, so we will be reviewing those at some point. And remember, you guys can link us any sort of gameplay that you want from Overwatch, and we'll do a review. Also, shout outs to visor.gg, which is where we do this editing. It allows us to do super cool stuff like that, and super cool stuff like searching for stills. Where is it? I'm gonna put in the Dorado. There it is. It's got stills of all this stuff, so you can see like spawn here, and you can go through there and all that stuff. It has all of those, and you can do it with a group of people so that you both can draw on it and all that stuff. So with that being said, Sam, take back over the thing, and let's get the VOD review going.
Alrighty. So, map of choice, or the map that is being played, Dorado, Doritos, great times are had. So we're just going to play along and I'm just going to point out things in which where, as a tank player, people should start learning how to make decisions based off of what is presented to them. So, nothing occurring right now, just
yeah. I mean, that's where you should be holding, is on the high ground. I think you're okay. Well, everyone rotates over there instead of staying behind. Like the Hanzo rotates over. Okay, then he comes back. Okay. Junk probably just trying to get some cheeky like early damage, and then probably gonna jump back over to you.
We're not worried about them. We're worried about Reinhardt at this point,
Yeah,
realistically.
your teammates do dictate where you position yourself, though.
So that right there, that just happened. As a Rein player, you don't let that happen. I'm sorry. Your shield is your greatest asset outside of your brain. So learning how to properly shield manage, the number one rule about shield management that you ever have to get out of ever playing Rein is you never let this break. Why do you not let that break? Why do you never let shield break? You don't let shield break because even if it has 5 health or less, you can still block some crazy things with it. You can block diva bombs, you can block roadhog hooks, you can block playmaking abilities. You can block all sorts of stuff that even if it has potato HP, you always save it just in case for a situation like that. And it's basically, if it shatters, your shield has to shatter for a very, very good reason. And as I mentioned before, it's your greatest asset in how you tank, because you have 2,000 of this, but you only have 500 of this. This has a bigger HP. This does not. So being able to realize how you manage of this shield and how much you manage of your HP is what will get you to maximize how to truly tank in this game. We'll go through more as it goes along. So, just standard uphold.
Yeah.
The payload is approaching. And we're now presented with a scenario. The payload is being pushed right under the balcony. And your main support, or one of your supports, just got roasted. So as a Reinhardt player, what should you do in this situation? As a Reinhardt player, again, as previously mentioned, your biggest asset outside of your shield is your brain. Your job as a tank, because you're not being mechanically inclined, you're not doing anything crazy, you're not counting on your aim too much, is to think like a legend. So in this situation, you're down one player, and the payload is being pushed. Realistically, as a Reinhardt, you should, at this point, rally either your team if it's possible. We understand that in ladder, it's not always going to happen. Some people might not even be in the chat or whatever, but you do your best to your abilities. But you try to rally the team and you try to hold up a defensive position until this character comes back. Which, as the payload is turning around, would be the first major point in actually defending against the payload going through.
So
now we proceed.
Also to add, right there before you go anything, he walked past on the left side. He walked past the Hanzo, and he also saw, like, in information, when he looked over the edge, he saw that the Rein and I believe one other character went in to the right side. So that meant that when he looks at the Hanzo and the Hanzo is looking at the payload, so those two are down there fighting whatever's going to come through, the Rein and then whoever. I forget the other one. But the Hanzo is up on the left. So one of his options here would have been to just go over to Hanzo and shield him while Hanzo stopped the payload from moving by shooting the squishies that were the only ones on the point. They had no shield because Rein came over here. So he just kind of ignored the Hanzo that was sitting on the high ground.
So let's just go on. Then another thing happens. Now both of the supports are down. And you have now jumped on potentially multiple targets without any of your supports. Sure, some of your teammates are down and you can think, maybe I can take them on. And it might happen. But realistically, unless you know that you can take on these people, you should never try to take down people without your backline. We'll just play the video and see what happens. So right now the fight seems basically even. In the way in which, sure, they have the better spawn time, but for the most part, you know, the numbers are trading off. Captain Sparky actually pops off and cleans up the mess for the most part. And so the situation normalizes because Captain Sparky just roasted everybody. And then Sport dies again. You got a pin. That's cool. The situation has now reset. So this line right here, basically, we see all this. The situation basically fixed itself more or less through chaos. And everybody's now in a position where they realize we cannot hold up here realistically. Most people, including myself, we've made the general error that we hold up here. But the problem inherently with holding at this position is you have nowhere to escape that has cover. So realistically, if we pull out this static image, when you hold market on first point, standing out here is generally a problem because if your shield breaks or there's too much pressure being applied down here, you have nowhere to run. It's out in the open and they can just blast you. So realistically, whether you're playing Orisa or Reinhardt, your job is to hold right here because you can either hide over here or you can hide over here. You can play around this area as well. And people can, I guess, poke out here and then make flanks around. But for generally a big mistake that a lot of people, including myself, have done is hold out here. Mm. Mm. Yeah, and as pointed out, what's really convenient about this, not only that you can block and have a place to hide, but it also covers not only mid, but any sort of weird flanks, because you see this direction over here in which people can climb through the mega, they climb up the stairs, and they go through here, which we've seen before. And if you hold over here, you have no real vision of. And if you see people flank via apartments, you see that and you can adjust accordingly. You can mm, mm. So the situation is reset. It is what it is. Pushing forward because they got picks. Hanzo's getting more picks. How he didn't get roasted was amazing. However, something else happens here. Right here. So your Zarya just got hooked. What do you think as a Reinhardt player you can do in this situation? So generally you can do one of two things. You let Zarya die for being picked out of position, or you help her. She is a bit far, so if it was left to me, I would have potentially let her die. But however, because there are range supports, it calls upon decision making. my decision could have been bad. It could have been good. That's it. It all falls under Reinhardt's just general thinking patterns and whatnot. Um, you have to be able to assess the situation and realize, does me allowing this person die for them being out of position better for the team, better for me? Does me trying to save this person better for me, better for the team? Will I be able to do it on time? So if you had decided to help the Zarya, sure, she had shield. But if there was teammates, as this Roadhog starts hooking and blasting this poor Zarya that's high energy, they would have finished that Zarya off. And walking slowly with her shield held out is definitely not the way how you would assist Zarya. You definitely need to run up more and then do that. See, that's a bit more akin to this. However, we come to the next point in which we notice a certain person who's been fragging out. Sometimes this happens as when you play DPS, you feel really good about yourself and you say, I want more. But we see this guy right here. We see Hanzo chugging out logs. He's opening without the cover. 4 seconds have passed. So Roadhog has 4 seconds left until his hook. And as he hooked this Zarya, he can easily hook this person. Or people that are coming out of spawn can roast this guy. As a Reinhardt player, what can you do in this situation? And again, I'll be asking this question a lot because this is simply to get people to start thinking like a tank while assessing what could potentially happen, and you have to weigh your options. You either think, I'm going to protect this guy and enable my teammate or allow him to escape. I'm either allow him to be more aggressive or I'm allowing him to survive. But at the same time, you realize, does me protecting him put me in danger, in enough danger that me dying will cause the team much more problems and cost potentially a fight? Does allowing him to die cost the team the fight? Does it allow us to be able to regroup while he gets back? It's a lot of decision making. Overwatch in reality is a lot of decision making, but your decisions matter more when you're playing tank because of you're not using mechanics. And
oh yeah.
So
talk about shield turning.
yeah, so right here, we notice the player starts turning around and looking behind him. So if you haven't played Reinhardt enough, or you simply didn't realize that there was a change, Reinhardt, if you're holding shield and then you hold the attack button, which depending if you're on console or on PC, on PC it's left mouse button, but on a console it would be, what is it, right mouse bumper, left mouse bumper,
yeah,
one of those,
it'd be
I can't remember
right
anymore.
bumper.
You can actually turn around while holding the shield in the same direction. So right now the shield is facing this direction. If you hold attack and you start turning your camera around, your shield will still stay in this direction. However, you can still veer around and turn around your camera to look around, which is also, it's really nice to have. And it was a really nice change that a lot of people, including myself, need to use a bit more of, because I guess a lot of Reinhardt players are still used to playing a bit more traditional, where you have to look at what you're doing and then block. It's simply, we need to take more advantage of little things like that and make use of them. So again, just holding the situation. There was nothing much that the enemy team could have done. It's Zarya Hanzo. No big deal.
I do think I think that this is something that Tommy actually knows, but can you pause it for a second?
Yep.
I do think that as a team, it would have been more beneficial for you to use Shatter, like not obviously not like during the grav, but like before the grav, because if you're able to shatter down the enemy team and the Hanzo gets all those kills, whenever the Zarya is able to grab them in the next fight, then you're able to get up a massive amount of ult charge back into like your next hammer, because you get charge way faster, or like you get ult charge way faster than Zarya does. And so if you're able to get like a pin and a fire strike is like 27%, and you're able to swing into those grabs, you're able to get just a ton of alt charge. So if you would have used it first and comboed with the Hanzo, then your team might have been able to, I forget what it's called, like domino alts, where you're able to just keep them going all the time. I forget what that's called, Sam. I forget the word. But you're able to string together alts better if you use hammer first.
And again, it's simply an option. It doesn't have to be that way. It's one of those hindsight optimal things, but again, it's definitely to start making you think, you know, how as a team oriented game, you know, how you can be more efficient in the game.
Yeah. So this position,
right
yeah.
One thing that I really noticed again, that Hanzo we were talking about earlier, sure, he was roasting the enemy team, but now he's getting roasted. He's getting roasted pretty hard. And the range supports are either not healing him or they're healing him, but he's taking too much damage. In this situation, you just have to accept that he's dead. If he doesn't die out of the situation, you think, holy crap, you're alive. You should have died, but you're alive. So let's just deal with how this situation got. And you simply regroup to a better position because the team is closer to the spawn and they're going to start rushing you. Mm-hmm. So the second you start walking forward in a situation like this, despite knowing that this guy is going to die, is problematic. And we'll find out why. So unfortunately, that happens.
So, you walking up there to try to shield the Hanzo, it obviously like it did ended up getting you killed, and he died regardless. And it left the rest of your team back at that choke by themselves without a shield. So the Roadhog was able to come around with his ultimate and was just able to finish everyone else off.
So this decision actually was pretty good, in my opinion. As a Reinhardt, realistically, unless you get the jump in on Bastion or figure out a way to charge him off or do something, you cannot contest Bastion. He does way too much damage, and he's made to break barriers, realistically. He's just an over-glorified barrier breaker. He can't do much of anything else. So because teammates were down, and there's many of their teammates, in fact, there's 5 of them, and one's headed your way, that decision to pull out was a good decision. However, we now notice another dilemma.
If you're going to decide to pull out, then you really need to commit to it. It's never like if you've lost multiple people in a fight, it's never a bad decision to just leave the fight. But if you're gonna leave the fight, then you have to like really commit to getting out of there and not just getting staggered farther. Because if you walk away, which this isn't exactly that instance, this isn't exactly what happens, but this is just another thing to think about, is that if you walk away but you don't walk far enough away from the team, it just means you get killed later, which means you spawn back later, which means the payload's able to move farther, or your team takes on a fight when they're in a man disadvantage.
Agreed. So we come to the next dilemma. This Reinhardt noticed you and is now charging.
Shatter.
Debatable. Debatable. Very debatable. So in this situation, Mac is saying shatter. In my brain, I think much differently.
No, I don't actually think we watched this video a little bit earlier, just to kind of get a general idea of like what we wanted to talk about during it, and we talked about shatter for a second, and I definitely don't think that shatter would have been the play.
Yeah. So character's charging. You know, in the situation, what do you do? There's a Bastion who's looking at you, trying to blast whatever's this direction. There's a guy charging at you. There's a Roadhog wandering around. In fact, there's another bunch of people running around. So what can you do as a Reinhardt? The decisions that the Reinhardt player decides to do interests me because in my brain, because this guy has started charging, no Reinhardt player ever charges straight. They always start moving around because it's like, oh, maybe I can predict or maybe I can grab something. In my head, you do a maneuver in which you just jump over the ledge and then you just kind of go up here. The Reinhardt cannot slippity sloop through the ledge and grab you. He might be able to hit you and bounce you around, but he can definitely not pin you. And we'll see why this happens. And that happens. You also gave the Reinhardt some charge. And another very important thing that a lot of Reinhardt players should understand is this. Ult tracking. Most people in general in Overwatch should ult track their counterpart, but as a main tank or a support player, your priority, because you are not being mechanically inclined, is to use your brain, as mentioned before. Ult tracking your counterpart and other characters is a very serious matter in this game, because if you can call out what people have ult or close to ults, you can play around that fact. You can outplay, or you can make plays. You can do what is called dry runs, where you simply do an attack of some sort with the intention of baiting out as many ults as possible. And this Reinhardt has charged a couple of times. He hasn't really used his ult, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I haven't seen it
Rein
either.
has ult.
So, he might have used it after the time that the Reinhardt player died to I think it was the Roadhog, when he pushed up to save the Hanzo. He might have shattered there because there was a couple squishies on the point that all died together. So he might have shattered there, but I don't know if he's used it yet.
No, but it's definitely important, especially in the Rein mirrors, to keep a track of how the enemy Rein is doing versus how you're doing. Because when you have that information, that whether they have more ult charge than you or you have more ult charge than them, you have that much more power in being able to make plays, whether it's you attempting to shatter them or you attempting to bait and block a shatter from them. So, you got pinned, bad things are happening. And they contested the point, but you were going to give the point anyways. And unfortunately, your teammates decided to run out regardless.
Oh, whoops.
So something that I thought about is that on reaction again, decision making and how you think and how you counterplay and whatnot as a main tank player comes, through playing, but also through doing a lot of thinking. And if this guy had not pinned and you had jumped up here, he would have just pinned the wall. And simply in this situation, you could do one of two things. You turn around and then you just straight pin him, or you run up towards him, swing him a bit, and then pin him towards down the hallway towards your allies, which would have been obviously the much safer bet. But again, it's one of those hindsights, how you react, what situation you're put into. So it's not always perfect, but it's better to make a decision in which you can try to be safer and then counterplay than to just straight up counterplay. So we'll keep going. And again, we talk about unnecessary damage. Walking out there after a teammate had died. Is there any real reason to do that? No, not really.
You can drop shield right now. You're not shielding any. Well, now you are. But when you were just sitting around that corner, you weren't taking any damage, and you were sitting there with 600 shield. If you had more shield at this point, that wouldn't happen. So, just like general shield management. So, one thing that, yeah. See, like right there, you don't need to hold shield right there, that whole time. But as a Reinhardt, you have to always be thinking, what am I shielding? Like, am I shielding If the answer is I'm shielding myself or nothing, then never have your shield up. And right there.
Unless it's to save yourself of some sort, there's really no reason.
Yeah. But
To do so.
that's still like a niche decision. So like in general, just always ask yourself, what am I shielding? If your shield is up so your team is able to take space, if your shield is up so you're protecting anyone on your team, then that's great. But if you're sitting there and you're only shielding yourself, or there's nothing to be shielding, then you should have it down and it should be charging. Because as was iterated at the very beginning of the VOD, your shield is your most valuable resource outside of your brain as a Reinhardt player. So as much shield charge as you can possibly have is what you want. And as we see, like, hindsight's always 20/20, but as you see after that sequence right there, that you could have charged at least another 400 HP on your shield, it ends up breaking like right after it.
That guy right there, he's angry. And if the player hasn't noticed by now, they're doing a Bastion type of El Presidente, as the older times called it, but now is now known as pirate ship type composition. So as a Reinhardt, you're always supposed to be receptive as to the situation that you're being put in, the enemy comps, your allied comps. They're running a Bastion, and playing against Bastion is never fun. Every Reinhardt will tell you that's not fun. It's playable, but it's not fun. So that guy's shooting, and he has line of sight. So you basically have to play corners constantly versus Bastion. And this, realistically, so not only do you play corners, but holding down here can be problematic at times, especially in this area. It's usually nicer to hold on the other side of the corners, back over there. But, you know, it is what it is. There's positional problems, and the team is retreating. And all this damage that's happening right here more or less would have been prevented if you were a bit more situationally aware around playing corners.
Yeah, it was all very unnecessary damage. The Rein somehow died over there, which is sick. So, are you gonna shatter right now? Yeah, are you gonna shatter? Because they don't have a shield at the moment. Okay.
So things happen. You know, whether it was the right time to shatter or not, you know, he could have gotten a shatter, but
yeah,
it happens. And also, trying to hit people on top of payload from the floor with shatter is very, very, very iffy. It might as well not work, because 3-meter shatter doesn't exist anymore, and it makes me sad, but that's another topic. So you ended up in this little room somehow. Two of your teammates just got roasted. And I believe other people may be engaged or dying. At this point, you have to keep an eye on the kill feed, because this can basically tell you, can I contest or reset and escape? Or escape and reset, to be exact. And you also have to think, there's a Bastion on top there. I can't really contest him as a Reinhardt unless he positions himself in a way in which I can fire strike or slam him or use this thing, the charge.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, it's basically a matter of aggression or preservation. And because it's a Bastion and you can't really approach it, it would probably be better to escape out the back and then just regroup via your teammate.
Yeah, just like walk out the back and then just charge back to your team. Or charge back to where the end of point 2 is, not like to where your team is right now. Don't charge in there. But
yeah. Back to where the team can regroup simply.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the player decides to make and ask questions based off of this. So his decision at this door was to charge outside, because they got the pick on Bastion. They're like, oh, hey, the Bastion's down. We can win now. The problem with this site right here, as he decides to charge, is there enemies on the screen? No. Let's just lay it out like that. Do you benefit from charging out there? Did he have a read? Is it better for you to run out into the open charging? Is it better for you to escape?
I think
will it benefit the team? Will it benefit him or the team? Realistically,
I think a
brain
part of
says
the
no, but again, it's one of those decisions as a Reinhardt that you make, and when you do a heavy commitment with this ability right here, the charge, that's a very heavy commitment. That unless Zarya is following up with a bubble or your team is following up in general, it's very very situational and not to be done very much. So we'll see what happens as a result.
I would say that I think this happens for two reasons, and you can pause the video really quick so I can. He's a player that kind of he's gotten lucky and has gotten those like blindside charges a lot, and it's something that he prides himself on. So it's definitely not a safe play by any means, and it's definitely not the right play, especially when you can't see any enemies. But I think that he's gotten so many lucky charges like from blindside that he thinks that it's like a reliable way to kill people, and so I think that was the thought process going through his head at that moment. Also, part two to that is that he does play, or he used to play, a lot of DPS, and I think as a Reinhardt player, he's still not completely in the Reinhardt player mindset where you're playing a game of like percentages. You're not playing a risk game like all the time where you're like able to escape. Like he plays a lot of Junkrat, so he's able to get in there then mine himself out. So he tries to make that super crazy like I'm gonna kill everybody play right here, and that's what his thought process was for that. I think it was wrong, but I kind of know the way the player thinks, and I think that that's what was going through his mind at that moment, was that I know that he has like a montage where he just where he just like blindsides people with charge, and that's really gratifying when you hit it. But as a team based game, if you're like throwing yourself out there, giving the opponent ult charge, and then and just like letting the payload go farther, it can win some fights, but like 80% of the time you're gonna, or even more than that, you're not gonna hit anything, and you're just gonna feed ult charge, and then they're gonna win the fight, and they're gonna move the payload up and possibly take the second point because of it. And he still has charge, or shatter.
So that right here, you know, sometimes you just need to get in. There was somebody contesting, but you know, it happens. It happens to the best of us. Sometimes you just charge in, and the Reinhardt is just gonna hit him anyways. Realistically, you could not have done much.
What would you have done here, though? Like,
me personally, I don't think I would have charged, because if you heard beforehand, both Moiras start ulting each other, and Moira is a pretty hard character to kill when she's ulting. I would simply just be running up there, maybe throwing a fire strike of some sort, but I would not charge unless I was trying to contest the payload of some sort.
Yeah.
But realistically, if somebody's contesting already and I don't see an immediate death, I'm not going to contest that payload immediately. So it could prevent this, but again,
it would have prevented it on him, but it wouldn't have prevented it on the Ana or maybe the Hanzo. It would have prevented it on the Hanzo, but it wouldn't have prevented it on the rest of the team.
It also hit, you know, this character over here, Zarya. So I mean, you could have maybe potentially blocked part of the ult on not only on yourself but on another teammate, but it would have still hit people. But as we see right here, you know, it didn't matter. That ult, you know, it was fine. He stopped an ult with it, and it's on Roadhog, who's a very
Yeah.
damage heavy character.
I think if so we can pause that. Can you pause it on the frame where the Roadhog like starts his ult?
Yep.
So it's like right there. So in his field of view is Flying Witch Lady and the Roadhog. If the Roadhog does not ult right there, because they press it at about the same time, but the startup for Roadhog's ultimate is a little bit faster, and I think he pressed it like a second or like a millisecond before he pressed his. This is a good shatter because it's on the Mercy. Like something that a lot of Reinhardt's at this elo do is they want to get the 6-man shatter. They want to get the giant shatter every time. But if you shatter and kill like 2 people, specifically a support, then you now have a 6v4 and you get to fight the rest of the team, the other 4 people, and get that ult charge for your hammer back up. So like obviously that the player is doing this right now, but I think it was a teaching moment for talking about like how people always go for the play of the game sort of shatter when it's a lot more beneficial. Well, I mean, obviously, if you can win the fight with a 6-man, then do it, but don't wait for it. If you can get a really solid like 2-man shatter, then it's like almost just as good. And if he wouldn't have been hit by the ult, I think shatter would have reached the Mercy. But he
Agreed.
but he gets pushed
Like,
back. So
yeah, no, that
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah.
But to one ult for one,
Yeah.
that's not too bad of a.
I mean,
trade.
it is kind of because Roadhog's ultimate has so little use with their team. It doesn't really benefit anything, like except for pushing people away a little bit. It's really not that good of an ult in their team. It doesn't really have anything to combo with. That's another
You have
thing.
to.
Yeah. No. I
That's
saw that
actually
too.
why I think it was a good decision.
Another thing that the player has not done is they have not looked at the other team's team comp the entire game. I have not seen them press. I guess it would be the middle button on console. It's tab on PC, but they haven't pressed the middle button at all to like keep in contact like with what the enemy team has.
So, interestingly enough, this is actually a good pause moment because that noise right there.
Yeah.
This man has just started an ult that has startup time.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I don't know how people react to, but as a Reinhardt player in general, your job is never to panic when that ult happens. When that ult happens, you make sure you have this ability right here. Fire Strike. You don't panic, and you do your very best to predict a Fire Strike. It's much harder, obviously, on PC because people can make it spin in 17 different directions, but you can still predict it, I promise. You can still try to do your best to hit it. But the fact that it's so close in proximity makes it that much more not only paramount, but easier to just not panic and just Fire Strike.
Yeah.
Because Fire Strike does 100 damage. The ult has 100 HP. You Fire Strike and you win because his ult is gone. Even if it doesn't hit Junkrat himself, it doesn't even matter. The point is to kill the ult. If you Fire Strike, you nullify Junkrat's ult for an ability, in which you're a winner, dude. That's so much better
Super
than
good trade.
an ult for an ult. That's a great trade. And something that this player does is he panics. The player panics because he sees this guy. He did not think of Fire Strike at all. And then we see this animation. The animation that every Reinhardt player dreams, sleeps, eats. A swing. You never, ever, ever swing at Junkrat's ult. You either Fire Strike or you jump back and try to block. Or try to figure out where it's going to try to go and you block. You never swing at that ult. Your swing does 75 damage. You will not burst that ult. I have never really thought of a reason in which you should ever swing at an ult unless they've already hit it. But even then, you could have.
Even then, by the time it gets close enough to you, if the Junkrat is good, they'll have blown it up. So
most Junkrats will detonate earlier, anyways.
Yeah.
It'll do damage. It's not worth it. So, you know, never panic. Just fire strike. Keep calm. Gather yourself and try to predict the tire.
There's still fight in me yet.
So this is basically, you know, how to get people into the mindset and thought process of a main tank, or particularly with Reinhardt. To play around corners a bit more, especially versus a comp like theirs. The charge is nice because he got ult and he started swinging around. So he got some ult. They won even though they used the Zarya Hanzo combo. That's fine. They got the Bastion.
That's a good
late.
pick. Now you don't need shield up at all. There's no reason to have shield up right here.
No.
There's zero reason to have shield when you're walking back. You also don't need to be right here. You're very easily flanked in two different directions by sitting right here, and you're just holding shit. Like, you're not even really taking space.
As a Reinhardt player, my favorite thing to do is to follow up on an Ana who slept somebody. My biggest feels bad moment is when I see a player slept out and the enemy team is around him, or it'll put me or my team in danger, and I basically stop and think, can I follow up on this? I can't, and I feel really bad about myself because as a Reinhardt, I'm like, yes, free energy, free charge, free death. But you have to gain your composure and don't charge. Obviously, the player does not decide to charge, just as a bit of a spoiler. But so the Ana has slept somebody, and the player decides to hold shield. But again, the player has not taken into consideration the composition of the enemy team. That's just the Reinhardt. Sure, they don't have a shield. And sure, you can try to enable your team to try to poke at them. But there's a Roadhog. They have a Bastion and a Junkrat. Junkrat's like off here somewhere. Bastion's about to spawn. Roadhog is over here. In no way, shape, or form should you realistically hold your shield out very long, unless you're out poking out corners or in a way that you can escape very easily.
Yeah, a way to think about it is, like, obviously the what are you shielding thing, but you have to think about what are you trading for your shield energy, because it is like such a valuable resource for you. What are you trading right here by getting your shield depleted? Like, what is it giving you?
Is your shield going down and you and your team being potentially caught off position really worth for your team to be shooting out into the open for this period of time? Is the potential shield break to potential enemy follow up to catch you guys off of position worth that risk?
And again, your Hanzo was one of the ones that was pushing really hard. Your Hanzo and your Moira. And your Moira's got Fade, and she's Moira, so she's never gonna die. She can always come back to you. And your Hanzo's got Jump, so he can now hurdle back too. So it's kind of a, you don't have to be shielding them all the time because they do have escapes.
Something I've also noticed is this backup right here. A lot of shield management and tanking in general could be mitigated if you know how to move as Reinhardt. So there's a little.
Oh, are you gonna talk about shield hopping now?
Yes, shield hopping.
Okay.
So every basic Reinhardt should know how to shield hop, and basically what it is you jump at the apex of your jump. So at the very top of your jump, you hold a shield button. You hold the shield, and as you land, the second you land, you let go of shield, and you rinse and repeat. So you do it, and you do it in a general direction that you want to move towards. And the reason you do that is because you allow your shield to hit some stuff, but then at the same time, you're allowed maximum movement without getting yourself killed. So in this situation, yes, you didn't take that much damage to your health, but does that really matter when both of your supports are behind you?
Yeah.
But
That's another thing about playing tank is that
all this damage happened to your shield.
Yeah.
That's not very worth it, in my opinion.
One of the greatest resources that you can give your team as Rein is for you to not die and give your supports a bunch of ult charge. And in that scenario specifically, when both of them are behind you and there's also some cover right there, so you're not really in any danger after you get that, there's no reason for you to like let your shield go down to 64 as he's circling right now. There's just no reason for it.
However, the reason I'm also circling the 64 is that the player is understanding not to let this shield die.
Yeah.
So that is a good thing. Despite the fact that we just said, taking unnecessary damage was not a good thing, they recognize that saving the shield, no matter how short it is better, because not only does your shield recharge much faster or start the recharge rate faster when there is energy left over, but when it breaks, there's a period in time where the shield has to redo or restructure itself, and then it'll start regenerating the energy. So it's much better to save that little bit of shield.
Yep.
So just standard play.
I think that little step in right there was when he got bubbled, he thought the team was going to go in, but then the rest of his team didn't really go in with him.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, the tank has decided to walk in against the enemy team. He's also not paying attention to his meter management. Again, this also comes into being mentally aware with what the enemy team has and what is happening in this little quadrant right here as well.
I do think positioning-wise it's not bad, but positioning combined with that 153, but that 153, if you start implementing the things that he and I was talking about a little bit earlier as far as shield management, that right there could be much higher, much higher, because you were at like 1200 when you just stood there and you just let the shield go down. So I do think, because what he's doing is he's getting in between his supports and both of his DPS, and so he's making space for them to be able to just unload down this hallway where they're Rein, and I believe that's Bastion on the other side of the Rein. Is that who that is? But they're now able to do that if he did have shield. Obviously, we're looking at the VOD where he doesn't have shield, and so it's a little different. But I just wanted to explain that the idea was actually not bad.
Yeah. So
B.
B for Bastion, but
I thought that was the Roadhog. Are you sure?
There is a Roadhog there, but there's also a Bastion back.
Okay, I thought Bastion was on the other side.
Or he might be here.
I thought that's where he was.
The reason I'm highlighting all this is because you have to think what the enemy composition is, and the player is taking a decision to walk in forward, and he's gonna start swinging. So is you walking into this team and swinging a good idea when they have a Roadhog, a Bastion, and who else? And a Junkrat.
I thought he was walking in and shielding. That's why I said what I said.
So again, it becomes a clown fiesta. And there's a lot of you could have prevented at bare minimum your own death for a bit longer if the ult did not the Junkrat ult did not kill you. And there's a lot of just standard downtime.
And we're going back up to this position, which is a very bad one.
Yeah, holding up at that position, generally not. You got the Bastion, you got the pin on the monkey. A play like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there was a focus of some sort, even though they caught the Bastion sleeping, they hit him, they hit somebody else, but specifically the Bastion, because the Bastion is a problem for this team.
I would also like to point out that we saw we once again saw that he was not really going for that play the game shatter. He saw that he could get 2 at the start of that fight, and he just shattered them, which I think was another good play. Okay.
So right here, this position that he's doing right now and keeps happening, I don't know if the player is aware, but you cannot block Moira's ult. It is unblockable.
I think that they knew, however, there's still other people behind the Moira that I think he was trying to protect his team from. If the only damage coming through is the Moira, then I think that his team will have the sustain behind him, although I haven't looked at the kill feed yet. I think I thought the healers were alive, so...
I haven't seen a pellet, that's why. So...
I thought Rein and Roadhog were the 2 that were behind there.
Well, just in case anybody doesn't know, you can't block my result. So, in my head, because you lost a teammate or something, there's no point in standing there. Just run, turn around, run, charge.
Yeah.
To a safer position.
There's nothing wrong with like losing a fight and then regrouping. and then keeping alive and like staying alive. Just like turn around and just charge away.
Yeah. You know, everybody loses team fights. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It happens. Just regroup. Do the best you can the next time.
I thought he was about to charge right into the hammer. I heard hammer come down and I was terrified.
Well. So,
are you okay with that string of events where he just charged in? Yeah,
did he have to charge in there when he could have been potentially tracking the enemy Ryan's ult?
Yeah, I mean, he pinned him.
But
I don't think the initial charge was good, but he pinned him. It wasn't a bad play. It wasn't like he was just throwing with it.
It worked.
But yeah, and then obviously then you have to focus on the Mercy after that. You have to kill her, especially if she's going to stand there and just try to res. Like you can just kill her.
So, obviously, correcting decisions like that at higher levels of play, you will get punished for that. So it's better to always correct high risk plays without purpose, because unless you're doing it with a very specific purpose that you know is very dire and you need to hit, there's no reason to make a high risk play as Reinhardt if your team needs you to block. But also, something very specific happens right here. Again.
Yep.
So,
no fire strike.
Unfortunately, he didn't quite have fire strike. He did try to contest it. Nobody could have expected a Junkrat to just instantly just do that. This Junkrat's crazy. So...
yeah, there's no reason for that to work, but...
he kept trying to swing.
Yeah. But now he knows, after that first time, he knows to not swing it tire, to always fire strike, and if not, hold shield and try to bait it.
Yeah, even if it kills only you, it's better that you try to mitigate the damage that it can potentially do. So he didn't have that. I initially thought he did, but he didn't, so he couldn't fire strike it. But again, if you have the fire strike, always be aware when you have fire strike. Be aware of your cooldowns.
Yep.
Do the things.
And Banjo Gajili, whatever that guy's name is, just ults their whole team again.
Jian Banjo Kazooie is doing things. So, you know, they managed to hold from getting third, which is pretty darn cool. You know, nothing to, you know, that's pretty good. I like it. You know, some things that, you know, can be corrected, but...
yeah, I think this being the first time that they have ever looked into, like, formal coaching or anything, I think that the information that you gave in this will definitely, like, there was a lot of instances where we had to say things twice because it was the exact same instance that happened on first point as what happened on third. And I think that if he starts to recognize those like decisions and why he makes them, that it'll be like a jump in skill. Another thing that I wanted you to say really quick before we end this is a lot of times Reinhardt's get kind of bored because they're just Mr. Rectangle Man, and a lot of things that we were saying where it's like, yeah, you could do this, but like just block, like, but just block. You
Just
could
block
charge
as
and try to do something cool, but just block. So
just
explain what the cool things that Reinhardt does, like with the big brain plays and all that stuff, because a lot of times people think that he's just Mr. Rectangle Man and he just sits there and he just blocks damage, and he kind of does, but just explain what really cool things he can do.
So, realistically, Reinhardt, the reason I like Reinhardt the most of the three tanks is because he is his playmaking ability is very apparent. For example, with Winston's, if you watch higher levels of play, then it becomes more apparent. With Winston, it's much harder, however, to make crazy efficient plays with Winston, simply because if the enemy has a way to mitigate the HP from Winston, then he's toast and he can't do the play. However, with Reinhardt, his ability to make plays is very apparent with Shatter. And for me, it's really fun playing Rein versus Rein because it basically comes down to who's doing the better job as a Reinhardt. Are you keeping a track of this Reinhardt? Are you keeping him in check? The better Rein, for the most part, will always be just walking all over the enemy Rein, not just aggressively, but always keeping into account what they're doing. Is this Reinhardt, also protecting their team? Is this Reinhardt doing goofy stuff? You're always keeping this guy honest. And whether it's happening to you or you're doing it to them. And Reinhardt has big capability of just doing overall damage, but not in the damage traditional sense of a DPS. Rightly enabled Reinhardt, or a Reinhardt that rightly enables correctly their team, basically allows them to live in situations where they should not be alive. I've had many occasions where I've put myself on the line to keep somebody alive, and I've had to angle shields and stuff that keeps teammates alive just for the right moments for them to survive. And they continue to survive, and then those situations like that, preservation of life in Overwatch is of the utmost importance. And keeping your teammates alive and annoying the enemy team with the fact that they're still alive and that you're preventing them from dying is a really good feeling. But again, back to playmaking. Ryan's ult is one of those interesting playmaking abilities because you can hold it for very specific scenarios. For example, something that became later accepted during the time was versus enemy Genjis who would try to ult. You save it specifically just for an ulting Genji because ulting Genjis have a high potential to make very heavy plays. So you use it as a counterplay. You stun him and then you just charge him into a wall and he gets deleted. His playmaking ability is gone. So you have the ability to not only make plays but to counterplay plays with that ult.
I also think it's really cool because the ultimate is very versatile. Like you're able to combo it with like a tire, or you're able to combo it with like high noon, or you can just slam two people and kill them on your own. So like
Yes.
you are your own follow up, as well as you can make like really big plays depending on what the scenario needs. Also, being Mr. Rectangle Man and sitting there holding shield means that you get a lot more time to think, which means, and like you already talked about this earlier, but it means that you're able to strategize around the enemy team's ultimates. And a really, really gratifying thing for me as Reinhardt is knowing the enemy has an ultimate, and because I was able to know that they have it, I can formulate a strategy using myself or communicating it to my team and just completely shutting down the cool thing they were trying to do. It's just really, really fun to do that. And yeah, it's I would agree 100% with your Rein duo sentiment. It's incredibly fun to play Rein dittos. And I love baiting the opponent's shatter and then
Mm.
just like putting your shield back down, and it's like the most gratifying thing ever. They just had their Q the entire time and you just completely erased it because you big brained them, and
Mm.
it's just super fun. So a lot of the like giant plays that you make as Rein, they don't show up in the stats. They don't like show up in the play of the game, but like you're intellectually superior to them and you're just like crushing them. Like, do you remember that episode of Jimmy Neutron where Sheen's head got super big and he was he was like Demon
Yeah.
Ultra Lord and he just shot down thought like lightning bolts at people? That's like what Reinhardt does. Is he doesn't just kill you with his hammer, which he does, but he kills
Yeah.
you with his brain, and that's what's really fun. Is like you're
Mhm.
not just reacting faster. You're not just like being more whatever it's called, being more mechanically inclined than your opponent. You're actually out thinking them, and that's
Yes.
that's that's what makes Ryan really exciting to me.
Agreed. I completely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah. So if that's all that we want to say, are you
Yeah.
happy with that? Yeah. We will definitely be looking into more of Loud Boys videos in the future. We do have that Mercy VOD as well. And again, anybody can send in a video. Just you can message me here on YouTube, or my Twitter is always in the description. So you can go there and then direct message me the link to your VOD. All consoles now allow the recording of up to like 30 minutes or something like that. It's like 15 or 30, one of the two. And if you're PC, then it's super easy for you. So send us those VODs. I hope you like this video. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Sam, for helping me.
No problem.
He will
Thank you
definitely be
for
back for the majority of the series. And yeah, we will see you guys next time. Later.
peace.